Oh, yes, it is that time once again. Episode 25 of Double Coverage Sports Talk coming to you from the Texags studios. We got a beautiful graphic up behind us, and we have video now of all things. We're going to be putting out Twitter clips, maybe some full-length videos as well on a YouTube page. We got to figure out if that's going to take fruition. But, man, it's good to be back, and like I said, I'm glad to be here in the Texags studios. Thanks to Dalton and everyone who gave us permission to crash the party for just a little bit. But, man, today, a lot of basketball talk. It's been a long time since we've talked college basketball, NBA, and, of course, a lot has happened over the Christmas break into the new year here. So we're going to start off the top, college basketball. We want to talk NBA as well. And then, of course, Luke will take us through the lesson at the end. But starting off with some kind of quick hitters from around college basketball. Like I said, a lot's been going on. A big upset last week when Michigan, all they had to do was take care of business on the road against Wisconsin. They fall, kind of created a what's going to happen situation at the top. Duke beats Virginia, but they had lost earlier in the week, so who moves to number one? Ends up being the SEC's own Tennessee at number one. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's always a fun year for me when there's good basketball in the SEC. They're always decent and average, but when teams like Auburn, who I'll get to them in a second, and Tennessee and Kentucky, when there's teams outside of Kentucky in the SEC that are good, it's exciting to watch. Like Tennessee right now is very well deserving of the number one spot in the country. Fox Sports, Aaron Torres is a massive Tennessee homer as well as Nevada, so that's cool. But I mean, Tennessee, interesting thing, 2 years ago, they were picked to finish 13th in the SEC. And Rick Barnes, what he's done with that team, I mean, he's developed players, and they play, what's interesting about Tennessee is they play all five positions. It's like positionless basketball for them. You've got guys like Grant Williams, who's the reigning SEC Player of the Year, a dominant player in Admiral Schofield, and then other players like Jordan Bowden, who could very well start on any team in the country. And he's almost a 50, 40, and 90 guy. He's 47% from the floor, 38% from three, and 90% from the free throw line. You know, he's at almost 11 points a game, and he's a guy that flies under the radar because there's players like Schofield and Williams who are so dominant. I mean, Williams is an undersized big. I mean, he gets buckets inside. He's good with his footwork, and they're tough, and they play with unbelievable energy. So a team like Tennessee is very fun to watch. Another interesting team is Duke. The big thing for Duke right now is that they're winning without Trey Jones, who is their point guard, who has an AC joint injury. He had that early in the Syracuse game, and Syracuse ended up taking down Duke. Boeheim was a little excited at the end of that game. A
little bit.
I don't know if it's proven, but he may have piddled his pants after there was a little bit of a puddle in his seat area, if you will. But no, so Trey Jones is a guy that holds the team together. He has 16 turnovers on the year compared to 91 assists. I mean, it's an unbelievable assist or turnover ratio. He's averaging 8 points, 3 rebounds. I mean, he's the guy that keeps it together because you got dynamic players like Zion, R.J. Barrett, and Cam Reddish, who aren't guys that, I mean, R.J. Barrett, without Trey Jones, put up 30 shots. 30 shots in a college basketball game is unheard of. So, I mean, you've got him overbouncing the ball. A guy like Trey Jones is so important to that team. But the fact that they're winning, I mean, they went and beat Virginia, the last of the undefeateds. So they move up to 2. Virginia's back down to number 3. And Tony Bennett, last time I checked, is still the coach at Virginia, and they just don't lose in the regular season.
No, they don't.
But for Duke, winning without Trey Jones is huge.
Yeah. Virginia, like you said, maybe the best regular season team ever. I mean, Bennett gets those guys up to play every single year, and it's you lock Virginia into a top 10 for sure, and oftentimes they're a 1 or a 2 seed, but then it comes to the postseason play, and I never put them past like my Sweet 16 because they just don't make it in the postseason.
It's so tough. I mean, this last year, unfortunately, of course, the year I put them to make the championship, they lose.
That was a bad
16 over 1 was bound to happen. But the thing is, when you've got a team that's so dynamic defensively, that wins you games in the regular season. But when you need buckets late in games in the NCAA tournament, when there's a lot more parity because there's a lot more emotion and energy, and just teams that play more equal in tournaments like those, I mean, they're so defensive oriented. It's hard to get buckets. And last year they're missing, I think it was their 6th man possibly, but it was one of their best scorers. So that put a dent in their scoring on an already team that struggled on the offensive end. One more team I want to get to is Kansas.
I was about to ask you about them.
My beloved Jayhawks. They are overrated. It pains me to say they are overrated. I think the record is 16-3, possibly
15-3 right now.
15-3. But they're a team. Bill Self prides himself on the high-low. You get big guys inside, and you get a few shooters in the corners, and you just play high-low, and you do seals and lobs, and just let their guys go to work. This year, they were going to have unlimited depth with Azubuike inside, with DeSosa, and the Memphis transfer who's leading candidate for Big 12 Player of the Year and first-team All-American, Dedrick Lawson. Sosa is ineligible, which is a very weird thing with the NCAA, and it's probably not going to be solved because the NCAA takes an eternity to solve things. And Azubuike hurt his hand, isn't out for the season. So now they have Dedrick Lawson. Okay, but let's look at their shooters. I mean, crickets. There is no shooters on the Jayhawks team this year.
Not this year.
Outside of LaGerald Vick, they shoot in the 20s from 3-point, 20%, something like that.
Sounds like the Aggies.
So, spoiler alert, yeah. But Kansas is, and they're a good team. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
It's still a Kansas team. It's still a great Bill Self-coached team, but they're very, very limited. Early they beat Tennessee, but that was with Azubuike. But man, the Big 12 is so much more open this year. And a few weeks ago, I'd have said, man, I don't know if KU can win the Big 12 and lose their 14-year streak of winning the Big 12 in the regular season, because Tech was at 4-1, KU was at 4-2, and Tech looked to be in the leading spot. And then as soon as I said that, I guess the basketball gods rewarded me.
Yep.
But Tech just dropped 3 straight.
Yep.
Iowa State, Baylor, and Kansas State. So now it's KU and K-State at 5-2 in the Big 12, and now KU has got another amazing shot to win the Big 12. So I guess you never bet against them. But this year is a lot more open for other teams that want to have that dagger in the heart of KU fans.
Yeah, it feels like you said, the Big 12 is a lot more open this year due to everyone else kind of dropping the ball. It certainly feels like Kansas is still in the driver's seat there. Before the season, I was looking at Tech going, man, they lost a lot, but I don't really know what goes on there in Lubbock, but they have a good basketball program all of a sudden. Got to watch them last year play SFA in the first round, and when their shots weren't falling, they were in trouble because SFA at one point was out rebounding the Red Raiders. But they found a way back into that game, and so this year they took Duke all the way down to it. I mean, boxed Duke into a corner there for a little bit, and then like you said, they dropped 3 straight. They opened it back up in the Big 12. Kansas, if they can find a way to get some perimeter shooting going, I think they can run away with the Big 12. I don't think that a team like Tech or Kansas State will be able to track with Kansas the entire length of the schedule. But it's wide open. And ironically, we talk about the SEC being a football conference. All of a sudden, the SEC is playing pretty solid basketball.
Yeah.
Which is actually where I want to go next. You look at the teams that are ranked in the top 25 in the SEC. Obviously, Tennessee's at 1. You got Kentucky at 8. Let's see here. Auburn's at 16. Ole Miss is at 20, but didn't they lose last night to Alabama?
That is a good question.
I think they lost last night. They were down big last I saw, and then LSU rounds it out. What are you seeing from the SEC that makes all of this kind of sensical, that all of a sudden that the LSUs and the Ole Misses of the world, who traditionally get it done on the football field, also can do it on the hardwood?
Well, I think you've got some older teams now. I mean, you've got an experienced Tennessee teams like the guys like Admiral Schofield and Grant Williams. You've got a Kentucky team that, these past 2 or 3 years, it's not just all one-and-dones. Duke has kind of taken that role as a one-and-done school. Whereas a few years ago, in like the 2012s to 2013s, that was all Kentucky and Calipari. But you've gotten some older players. Yes, you still play plenty of freshmen, but a guy like Kentucky having a guy like P.J. Washington come back that started playing well as of late, and then you've got an experienced team like Auburn. Auburn's got some great players. Yes, the past 2 or 3 games they've been struggling, but man, the SEC has got some experience, and then you've got some tough, hard-nosed coaches like a Frank Martin in South Carolina that is going to drill you on the defensive end. No matter who they're playing, I mean, that is a scary team to go up against because they're going to play very hard and they're going to give it to you on defense.
Yeah, I think part of the Gamecock success is just their fear of Frank Wilson and just being chewed out after the game.
Yeah,
because they're not a super talented team. I was listening to the radio. They're not more talented than A&M is.
No.
But they play so much harder because that's just the fire that they get from their coach. And we'll get to A&M in a minute.
Martin's just an imposing guy. I mean, they went to the Final Four. Was it two
years ago when both South Carolina squads.
Sindarius Thornwell. He's in the league now. But yeah, it's been fun watching SEC basketball. And it's weird as an A&M fan, you're cheering for Rick Barnes. I mean, it's hard not to like what you're seeing in Tennessee. I mean, Rick Barnes, side note, has been a great guy. I mean, there's guys coming to faith on that Tennessee team. Like they're doing some amazing things culture-wise and team unity-wise. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. This weekend, you have the Big 12 SEC showdown. Texas A&M taking on Kansas State. We'll talk about that in just a second. But as a Kansas Jayhawk fan, you're playing Kentucky this weekend. Who do you like in that game?
Gosh, that's tough because Kentucky doesn't have any imposing bigs. They've got a Reed Travis, who's a grad transfer from Stanford, I believe. He's just a run-the-floor rebounding kind of guy. But, man, K is going to have to find a way to shoot the ball. I mean, Bill Self's going to be able to dial things up, and you've got a guy in Dedrick Lawson for Kansas, like I said, who he's going to get his against anyone. I mean, he's a 20-12 kind of guy. That's very hard to guard at the college level. I mean, I'm hoping for a good game. It's going to be really cool to see Calipari and Self duel because I feel like we don't see a lot of KU Kentucky.
Yeah, unless you make it to like the Final Four type deal.
I mean, you see a lot of KU Michigan State. They played earlier this year. I mean, Michigan State is 6th in the country right now. Very quiet.
Tom Izzo is always good.
Izzo, the little wee short man that he is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a cat for sure. But speaking of, you brought this up earlier, that first round of games you went to with Tech SFA, you hit the absolute jackpot of first round games because didn't you also see? Did you stay?
We stayed for Florida. Oh goodness, who did they play? Team from up northeast. I'm totally blanking on that. Northeast team, it was like their second time ever in the tournament. Their fans were hilarious, also obnoxious, but it was interesting. It was a really good time at the AAC, and I'd love to see it back there again so that, over spring break or whatever, you could go.
Because wasn't I thought Miami and Loyola.
Yes, Miami played
Loyola. Chicago, that first
right
round.
Before that. Yeah,
Okay.
so I watched that on TV, and then I went to the AAC right after that to see Tech SFA, which was a surprisingly good game, and then Florida, and I don't remember who it was.
Because then Tennessee lost that. Did they lose the first round? I don't remember. I do remember the same gym was Lehigh or Loyola in Miami, and then Tech SFA.
Yeah, Loyola with the buzzer beater over
that
Miami.
Tech SFA game, you were texting me during that.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't think Tech can pull this off.
No.
They played St. Bonaventure.
Bonaventure.
The Bonnies.
Yeah, that's right. We had a guy right behind us who we were sitting next to some Florida people. They filed in for their game, and these St. Bonaventure people who just had the thickest Northeast accents I've ever heard. They're talking about, it's snowing up here. There were the whole school basically came down here to see, and they're like, we don't expect anything, but at the same time, it's warmer down here than it is up there right now, so we're going to escape the snow. And they yelled anything and everything that came to their mind, including obscenities, and the Florida family right next to us didn't really appreciate that, but it is what it is.
Yeah, so Tennessee played Wright State, and then Loyola Chicago beat them in the round of 32. Man, what a run that was.
It was a great run. I mean, they're on my Final Four T-shirt that we got for going to the championship game.
I mean, I'm horrible at picking brackets. I mean, I remember I put Drake in the Final Four years ago. You know what? I remember Drake and Syracuse were on one side of the Final Four.
Like Drake the school or Drake the rapper?
Well, I don't want the Drake curse. I honestly probably have it in picking brackets. I'm atrocious. Anytime, if you have the opportunity to get in a group of picking brackets with me, take that every time.
Yeah.
Because it's like stealing money from me.
Yeah, your sister just destroyed you, right?
My sister and my mom pick based on their favorite mascots and colors. Actually, my mom's a basketball fan, so she picks a little more, but my sister is like, yeah, I like their mascot. That sounds cool, colors, and destroys me every year.
Well,
So, oh well.
there you go. All right, from the college hardware, that's all you want to talk about with college, right?
Yeah, that's some good stuff.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, man, Texas A&M. I guess we can mention Texas A&M real briefly before we get to NBA. I don't really know where to peg this. I mean, I think everything has to start at the top. So it starts with Coach Kennedy. Billy Kennedy is a fantastic guy. Let me start by saying that he's just a great gentleman. He's a church leader, and really, really cares about the college kids that he gets to influence. But my goodness, I just don't feel like he is able to motivate these guys anymore. I mean, you look at TJ Starks, the way that he played against Auburn, the way that he played against Missouri, when he did play against Missouri, did not start that game. It's clear to me that, TJ has certainly checked out on this season, and I think that, if you don't have some sort of motivator come in, I think you're going to have more and more guys check out. The guy that's playing the best right now is Josh Nebo, and he's really not even getting minutes that you would expect to see from your most productive player. So when you have, Coach Kennedy take the mic in the postgame press conference and say that, they had to put in Mark French, who is shorter than me, to provide a presence and a spark, that's really not good. And so I think, unfortunately, I really do think that this is Coach Kennedy's last year here in Aggieland as the head basketball coach. There's a lot of rumors flying around kind of around the scenes about where the Aggies might go to get their next head coach, if indeed that is the course that they choose to take. But, last night you covered the game, and I guess you can speak to it better than I can. A&M up big over Florida, 46-33 at the half, and then Florida for the game ends up shooting how many 3 points?
They went
18.
In the second half, they went 11 from 15 from 3.
Yeah, and I think they hit 18
I think they
for the game.
18 total.
Yeah. I mean, how many times do you lose a game when you shoot 18 threes, and A&M just could not? I mean, one thing is the shots were falling. That's going to happen. But for A&M not to be able to adjust at all and take away that perimeter shot, you saw it against Auburn too. Bryce Brown scored 19 straight points against the Aggies.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, you just don't. You should never have runs like that. And by the time that Coach Kennedy did finally call timeout in that Auburn game, it was way too late. I'd been calling for him to call a timeout for like the past 3 possessions, and Bryce Brown trots down, gets a kick out pass, kind of like Dirk is famous for, and sinks a 3. So what do you see when it comes to this A&M basketball program?
I mean, the first thing I would say is I can handle a lack of talent.
Yeah,
that's you can say what you want, but if you don't have talent, that you can be okay with that, because there's plenty of coaches that can rally lack of talent. You see it every year in the tournament. These small school teams winning their conference, getting an auto bid. You see it with a team like Tennessee. You see it with a team like Ole Miss, with Kermit Davis transforming the culture in Ole Miss. I mean, he did amazing things in Middle Tennessee, and now he's at Ole Miss and changes the entire team, the culture. Ole Miss doesn't have crazy top 100 guys. They have a few top 150 guys. But A&M has the poor case of lack of talent and lack of playing hard, which you cannot win games like that. And I agree, Billy Kennedy's a fantastic guy. He's a strong believer. He cares about his players. But, man, a good coach and the great coaches are culture changers. And the culture of A&M basketball right now is not acceptable. I mean, you've got you look the telltale sign of a team's energy is you look at their bench. In high school, our coach said, "All right, if you are going to stand up and cheer, wave your towels, everything on the bench the entire game, because that translates to the floor." And especially if you're coming off the bench, if you're sitting there with your legs crossed and your chin in your hand, you can't just expect to go out in the court and do well. I mean, you look at A&M's bench, and sometimes they stand up, but they're not enthusiastic and energized. And then you have bad attitudes if you play bad. And then in practice, it's not consistent. So, and the other thing is, I mean, there's so many different angles I can go with this, but one noticeable thing is player development is an allergen to A&M basketball. Yeah. There is no player development. The TJ and Savion Flagg are the most elite players on this team, and they're the same as last year, if not worse. They're shooting terribly from three.
Yeah.
And so you look at the assistant coaches and ask, what are you guys doing to develop your players? Mm-hmm. And then you look at Billy Kennedy and say, look, if your assistants are not developing players, then why are they still here? So this all translates to just there's a culture at A&M basketball that's just not great. It's inconsistent. Last year you have a big team. This year you have a three-point shooting team that can't shoot threes. Next year's recruiting class is 22nd in the country, 5th in the SEC, but there's no true bigs. So what kind of strategy, what kind of team is Billy Kennedy wanting? You have no idea. So there's just a lot of inconsistencies to where I agree. I'm not so sure how long Billy Kennedy's going to last here.
Yeah, I completely agree with the bench point. And, to your point about player development, TJ Starks, that is one of the most disappointing wastes of talent that I've seen. And I'm not a huge basketball guy. I watch, but I'm not, you're the basketball expert out of the two of us. But, even to a casual fan like me, it's very apparent that TJ Starks is just, there's something missing from his game that keeps him from being that next level player, because he's got all the tools to make it happen. I was listening to a radio show earlier, and they were talking about how, TJ, if he could just settle down, if he could just take a breath, and, the time that it takes to do, 3 or 4 of his possessions where he just grabs the ball, sprints down the floor, and tries to jack something up and make a play, if he could just take a breath, settle at the top of the key, and then, if ISO ball is your thing, go for it. But just figure out where you're going to go with the basketball instead of just, breakneck sprinting down the court and, throwing up a layup with 2 bigs in your face, and it gets rejected, and bam, you waste a possession, and you've had the ball for all of 4 seconds.
Yeah, head coaches have to be able to control and teach their teams to be smart.
Yeah.
And to be able to be coachable. You look at this year's team, 125th in overall efficiency according to the Ken Pom.
Yikes.
Last year, 29. Last year was 14th in defensive efficiency. This year, we're 134.
Yeah.
It's night and day. And yes, there's a talent drop-off, and yes, I'll hear the argument that Billy Kennedy did not expect some of last year's players to declare for the draft, and a lot of us will agree that some of them went too early. DJ Hogue went too early. But also, DJ Hogue's a guy that was the same player his freshman year and his junior year.
Right. Yeah,
there was no
progression. No progression.
Tyler Davis, because he's a workhorse,
yes,
spent hours in the gym and transformed his body. He developed.
Yeah.
But, that's just one player.
Exactly.
Robert Williams was the same player his sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just, I don't know, teams that need improvement and culture change, you have to bring in not necessarily a ferocious, in-your-face guy, but a guy that will get his team's attention and demands for his team to live up to his demands.
Right.
So it's tough to see. A lot of fans aren't happy. Last night, the first half was great. 7 of 11 from 3 in the first half.
Yeah.
They were playing hard on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Nebo was playing well. He got good minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And the second half was a mix of turnovers late and then Florida just getting scalding hot from distance.
Right. And, I tweeted at the half saying this is exactly the response that you needed to see. The guys are playing tough. They're obviously taking it to Florida, which is not an elite Florida. It's not a Billy Donovan Florida.
Yeah.
But on the road to a team that I think we can all agree is much better than Missouri, and you're taking care of business. And so I tweeted out, hey, love the effort. This is how they needed to respond. And, of course, the basketball gods were like, wait, no, just kidding. And Florida, like you said, got hot. And so, the effort was there last night, and that's what you need to see the rest of the season. I think we can all agree this season is lost. Mm-hmm. This season means nothing standing-wise for the Aggies. But what you do need to see is you need to have some sort of hope going forward. You need to believe in Coach Kennedy to be able to stay on, develop players, make changes if he needs to. My goodness, someone has to get the attention of guys like TJ Starks. Savion Flagg has to develop. If he's going to play a 4 position, I know he's kind of playing positionless basketball. If he's going to play a 4, he needs to rebound. Mm-hmm. Watching guys that he's guarding jack up a 3 or a long 2 and then just blow by him to get their own rebound is inexcusable.
Yeah, and you want to see carryover. Yes, this team is this season is very underwhelming and disappointing. But man, you're just 7-10. You want to play for an NIT berth, and you want to have carryover for next year because all these guys are coming back. These guys aren't, these guys at least, these for sure guys are coming back. And then you've got a good recruiting class coming in. No matter who your head coach is, for these players, as a player, you want to be able to finish the season strong because for any sport, that has carryover into the offseason and encourages you to continue getting better and have hope for the next season.
Yeah. All right, well, that'll do it for the college basketball portion. We're going to move over to the NBA, and then before we get to the lesson, I want to talk about the AFC and NFC Championship games really quick. But let's talk a little bit of NBA, and we want to talk the Dallas Mavericks, who, man, it's just been such a weird season because coming in, I didn't expect anything from this team. I was excited to see how Luka and DSJ gelled. Initially, they didn't really gel, and we're going to talk about that. But the Mavs got off to a scalding start at home, could not buy a road win, but talk about defending the AAC. They were golden there. Yeah. Now they've kind of gone on a little bit of a losing streak, beat the Clippers last night. Luka Doncic goes Hulk mode on his jersey at the half. That was kind of cool. What are your thoughts about the Dallas Mavericks, and what do you think is possible the rest of this season?
Well, one thing, you found a diamond in the rough. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but he was expected to be good in Luka, but boy, did you hit home on a draft pick.
Yeah,
which has not been able to be said. Outside of Dennis and Luka, it's been years of drought.
Yeah,
it's tough. The worst team you can be in a professional sport is middle of the road good.
Yeah. So you're out on solid measures draft pick then. You're saying that didn't pay dividends. I'm shocked.
Hey, I'm not out on in solid we trust, baby. But man, you've been picking in the 20s, the late teens, and then you'll trade your pick, and it's been not really anything. And then you get a guy like a Jay Crowder, and then we trade him away for a Rondo, if it's a stretch of a trade. Yeah. But regardless, this Dallas team, it was huge to sign DeAndre Jordan. He has single-handedly turned around he got a fan in the window, fellow redhead. But you've got defensively and rebounding-wise, it's very fun to watch the Mavs. Yeah. And then offensively, you've got explosive plays. You've got Luka, who's incredible in the pick-and-roll game. He's got great vision. And DeAndre Jordan, who basically just plays in the middle of the floor. You've got a 4-out, 1-in kind of offense. He rebounds well. He runs the rim well. And Carlisle, I don't know about Carlisle. He's a great coach. I'll get to that in a second. But Dallas has very good role players that know their roles, like a Dwight Powell, like a Maxi Kleber.
I was about to say.
Who, again, let's not make him super famous because we want to be able to re-sign him for cheap. Wes Matthews, say what you want. He's been good. He'll be off our books. That's another $19 million in cap space we can use. But it's been a very fun season to watch because you've got a great pick in Luka who's able to have the ball in his hands, and you've got players that play hard and know their rules. So that's really all you can ask for in a rebuilding, developing young team.
Yeah, and Luka Doncic, no doubt, is the future. Huge credit, I've said it before, to Donnie Nelson finally getting the control that he needs in the draft room to be able to go out and build a future for this Dallas Mavericks team. When it was Mark Cuban running the draft room, like you said, we were trading away picks, we were picking late, guys that sort of might do something. Now, Jay Crowder was great. Jay Crowder's a solid NBA player, but he's no Luka Doncic. Yeah. And so, obviously, difference in
it was just like we were picking two-way players, like an A.J. Hammonds. Yeah, a good college player, but he's not going to make a huge dent in the NBA.
Yeah, exactly. Not difference makers at this level. Want to get to the issue that's been the real story in Dallas. DSJ has been sitting out some games while the Mavs were reportedly trying to move him. DSJ didn't feel like he gelled in this system with Luka Doncic, which, it's tough. He was brought in last year, and he was supposed to be the savior. Was a candidate for Rookie of the Year, was in the dunk contest, really got robbed in the dunk contest. Oh, yeah. Dallas was anointing DSJ as this is who we're building our franchise on going forward. And then out of nowhere comes Luka Doncic, who you trade up to 3 to go get a fantastic trade with the Atlanta Hawks. And now Luka has the ball, more often than not, and DSJ isn't getting his touches. So answer me this. Do you agree with how the Mavericks have handled the DSJ saga? And then secondly, do you think he has a place here, or do the Mavs need to look to move him?
Oh, man. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
Yes and no regarding the Mavericks handling it well. And then, yes, I think Dennis has a great spot here.
Mm-hmm.
Let me walk us through what we know from the Dennis Smith Jr. perspective. We know he has recently expressed he wants to be traded and is frustrated with his role and not manning the offense. Because last year, he had a high usage rate. He averaged like 15 and 5. We know Dallas has quietly shopped him all season, but has not received any substantial offers. And the front office still believes he can be a star. We know prior to last night's game, when Luka and Dennis are on the floor together, they score a little over 100 points per 100 possessions, and Dallas's overall points per 100 possessions is around 108. And so when Luka and Dennis are on the floor together, they play worse offensively. Mm-hmm. And then we know DSJ and Luka are friends. They live in the same apartment, so there's not any beef between them two. And we also know that Dennis Smith has developed. He has increased his field goal percentage from 40 to 44, and his three-point shooting from 31 to 38. So regarding Dennis, I'll walk forward through from Carlisle's perspective as well. Rick Carlisle has been frustrated with Dennis for quite some time, and this is not Rick's first not great relationship with a point guard or a team that needs to develop cerebrally. Yeah. That's Rick Carlisle's thing with Dennis, is he over-dribbles and can turn the ball over. But here's the thing. Either Dallas is just idiotic, which I can see that happening because there's been constant drama in Dallas since 2011 with letting players go, with an O.J. Mayo, with a Rondo, with a Lamar Odom. Or Dennis Smith Jr. is getting absolute terrible advice from his dad and his agent. I know his agent's upset, but man, Dennis could potentially... Dennis on the floor with Luka, his stats can be inflated because Luka has to have the ball in his hands, and he's better with the ball in his hands, making plays for other people, making plays for himself. And Dennis, if he continues, like the perfect running mate for Luka Doncic, is a guy that is a defensive stopper guard, is energy and athletic and can run the floor and can catch and shoot threes. Mm-hmm. Dennis can be that. He's shown this season development guarding on the ball. He's shown a significant development catch and shoot and shooting pull-ups. He could potentially be the perfect running mate. Now, it seems like his agent and his dad are telling him, look, you need to go to Orlando. You need to be able to shoot 20 times a game, and that's best for you. Look, if that's the case, then we can't control that. Right. Dallas cannot control that. But man, Dennis and Luka could potentially be great together, and only 30 games together is not enough to see. I'd love to see a whole season without drama, but man, it's... And then looking from Dallas' side, they could potentially just be the dumbest organization of all time. Because if they want to trade Dennis, all this drama they're allowing, alienating Dennis Smith, is just hurting his trade value.
Yeah.
But, good news, last night, beat the Clippers. Dennis had 17, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and Rick Carlisle said that's probably his best game he's ever played in Dallas.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And Rick apparently apologized to DSJ on the phone, which I can't even imagine happening. Rick calling up Dennis and saying, look, I'm sorry. I don't know if that's even possible, but it's been reported. So all of that being said, those are my kind of thoughts if you'd like to somehow respond to that wide array of information.
Yeah, let me get Followell on the phone and confirm that. No, I think you're right. I think... when you look at what the Mavs potentially could be, is DSJ going to be the traditional point guard here? Well, no, probably not now, because you have a lot of people believe a generational talent in Luka Doncic. Mm-hmm. Now, it is way too early to anoint him, the new, prince of basketball, I think. But at the same time, the stuff that he's doing is special. His ability to hit shots, that shot against Portland to send it to overtime, which unfortunately they ended up losing that game, but an absolutely unreal bucket from a deep three falling into the bench to send that to overtime. He just has an it factor. And while DSJ is certainly a good player, he's not going to be the guy that this offense needs to run through. And so I think, to your point, what you're saying is DSJ can be all the things that the Mavericks need him to be, in order to perfectly gel with Luka and create a really dynamic offense. I mean, you add that with DeAndre on the low block. My goodness, he and Luka gel really well together. If you can get some sort of relationship with DSJ there too, and you have a three-headed monster on offense for the Mavericks, I mean, now defense is going to be a different story, but it's really exciting. It's the most, I think, future potential that the Mavericks have had in their long time. I mean, like you said, the point guard disaster with OJ Mayo, that ended ugly. Rondo obviously was a dumpster fire, ended with a back injury, which really just meant he stayed home.
Maybe the same back injury Dennis has been having lately.
So, it's just, I agree. I think I think Rick Carlisle probably isn't the coach that works the best with the young talent and is a guy that's going to get the most out of those young guys, just because he has a completely different philosophy than what a lot of young players have now.
Yeah.
Like you said, DSJ, maybe he over dribbles and he turns the ball over. Well, that's going to happen with these young guys.
Yeah.
And, Carlisle can't just overreact and throw them under the bus like we've seen him do with some guys if you want cohesion in Dallas. I don't know. Those are just my thoughts on it.
See, when I had a hesitation on Rick Carlisle earlier in the podcast, this is my reasoning. As a front office of the Dallas Little Mavericks, you win a championship in 2011 with a veteran-laden team. Then you let everyone go. Hey, thanks, Tyson Chandler. You're good.
Yeah.
See ya.
You got that T-shirt that has like the roster of the championship team on the back, and like half the guys are gone the next season.
I couldn't tell you where Deshaun Stevenson is in life, in the world. I don't even know if he exists anymore.
Brian Cardinal, how about him?
Ooh, the custodian. But here's the thing. If the front office thought that they could turn over a team to Rick Carlisle who won with veterans, all right, now we're going to give him a rebuilding and young team. If they thought that was going to go drama-free, then they're wrong.
Yeah.
When there's huge changes like that in organizations, a lot of the time there's a coaching change with a new vision. Because Rick Carlisle, he doesn't have a lot of patience for these young guys. Now, with Luka, it's different because he's so dynamic.
Right.
And Luka is a very mature type player. But with a player like Dennis, there's some growing pains.
Mm-hmm.
Now, say what you want, devil's advocate here. Rick Carlisle, I mean, he did fly to Fayetteville, North Carolina last summer and worked on Dennis Smith's game with him.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's willing to put in the effort. But at the same time, he doesn't tolerate non-cerebral basketball.
Yeah.
So for a guy like Dennis, he's going to have to play the humble. He's going to have to be humble and allow himself to be coached instead of just taking this crap advice from his agent and his dad that are giving him, like, telling him he needs to be able to shoot 20 to 25 shots a game.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if they're intelligent, Dennis Smith's stats are going to be inflated by playing with Luka, because he just has to catch and shoot, run the floor, and he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands because Luka can make plays for him.
Right. It feels like DSJ's, like, to your point, his dad and his agent want him to be a Russell Westbrook, and he's just never going to be that. Yeah. I mean, Russell Westbrook, I don't think a lot of people saw Westbrook being what he has turned out to be. Good player in college, but I mean, a guy that just can dominate to the level that he has at OKC. And I don't think DSJ is ever going to be that. I could be proven wrong if he goes to Orlando and, runs his own show. That's certainly his prerogative. But like you said, I think if he stays here, there's just... Luka is a dynamic player. He's a generational player. He makes everyone else on the court better. Mm-hmm. Whereas, a guy like Russell Westbrook, when he feels like sharing the ball, it's great. But if he's going to take 50 shots a game, that certainly doesn't help the team. And so, I really hope DSJ stays here. It would be fun to build around a young nucleus with, a DeAndre Jordan as the veteran presence on the team, a Harrison Barnes if he sticks around, type of deal. Although, man, he's expensive. Anyway, but we transitioning off the Mavericks, we made not a bet necessarily, but we talked about it early on an earlier basketball episode, debating on whether or not it would be the Golden State Warriors in the finals again out of the West, or if it would be the Field. And you took Golden State, and I took the Field. And right now, I got to say, you're looking pretty good. The Golden State's 33-14. They are one game officially up on second place Denver, which I mean, Gary Harris is a fun player to watch, but
Golden State exposed them.
Yeah,
I mean they 30-pieced them recently.
I think it just further proves all of a sudden in 1 year the league has done a complete 180 where it's always been the West. The West has dominated for years. And this year, I think I would take, besides Golden State...
There's a lot more parity in each conference.
Yeah, I think I would take probably the top 5 Eastern seeds. That's Milwaukee, Toronto, Indiana, Philadelphia, and Boston over Denver. I mean, I would be willing to bet that, hey, the Eastern Conference probably wins on that. But, I got the football picks right. But, my gosh, you may be very correct with Golden State. Logan just messing with both of us right now. Love you too, buddy. All right, gonna have to talk to him about that next time I'm on air with you. But, I mean, a lot of intrigue. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with the Mavericks. Like you said, a lot of hope going forward. If we can get the Mavericks as a team to continue to gel, I don't think they do much this year. There was a time where I thought maybe the 8 seed is possible. And I guess it is still possible. You have to win on the road. Yeah. But we'll just have to wait and see with Dallas. All right, very quickly, the last thing we want to do before we get to the lesson, got to talk about the NFC AFC Championship games. Obviously, the big story is the blown pass interference call with the Saints. Per a lot of different people now, I guess this is a day after, there's a civil suit being filed on behalf of the Saints fans. That the NFL legally is obligated to replay the last 2 minutes of the game with that call being made, so then it would be a first down for the Saints with like a minute 47. Yeah. The Rams have one timeout, so basically it would be
like the
3 snaps and a
power
field goal.
outage of the Ravens 49ers Super Bowl, but on heavy HGH.
Yeah, it just
you don't mess with Southerners football.
Yeah, and I'm in a fantasy football league, a dynasty fantasy football league, and so with the league continuing for multiple years, we have a group chat that obviously continues too. We have a diehard Saints fan in that. That chat has been blown up nonstop since that call was made, or wasn't made, I should say, on Sunday. And, I didn't think I would meet someone who seriously believed that this lawsuit was legit. He does. Straight up, he's like, no, yeah, they owe it to him. He doesn't think it'll happen, but he says it's a legitimate case, that it should happen. I mean, do you think there's some rule in the NFL rulebook, like Rule 17 sub
There's a few hyphens, a few letters.
That says that the commissioner has the power to rewrite the result of a game or make the team replay a piece of the game? I mean, what do you think about all that?
I mean, it's definitely a real rule. I don't know if it's ever been used, and there's no way it's used in this scenario because, I mean, it's a blown PI call, but
maybe the worst blown PI call ever. I mean, Nicole Roby-Coleman trucked that guy.
But, I mean, I've always had it in me that you just can't blame refs for a loss.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's egregious, but then there's gray area of, okay, well, how egregious do we restarting a game?
Yeah.
Like, do you...
Well, I mean, it would just be the last 2 minutes.
Yeah. The last 2 minutes. What do you do about fans? Still, I mean, there's so much stuff to go into.
Right? Is it like a a rainy day check that you get for baseball if your game gets rained out? Like you just redeem your ticket again and you get to come back in?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no way it's gonna happen. Right. I mean, the Rams are gonna keep their Super Bowl berth. But I mean, it stinks as a Saints fan, as Sean Payton, as Drew Brees. I mean, and then Sean McVay was like, he said something about not talking about the call, and then the Rams DB was like, "Oh yeah, that was."
When Coleman was like, "Yeah, that was," and he said something like, "It was so obvious to everyone. Of course, I'm gonna say it was pass interference. Like we all know it was." Yeah, it's I'm in the same boat. I don't like to blame the referees for a loss, a win or a loss, either way. I wasn't that way when Texas A&M lost to Clemson on a horrible touchback ruling. The Courtney Davis fumble that should have been A&M's ball at the 1. But I think in this case, I firmly am putting the Saints. The reason the Saints are not in the Super Bowl, I am putting on that official because, yes, Drew Brees was 4 of 11 in the fourth quarter. Yes, Sean Payton, run the football. What are you doing throwing it there anyway? Just run the ball. You're in field goal range. So there are factors that, the Saints did shoot themselves in the foot. But at the same time, if that's called, which it's called, 99 times out of 100, it's 1st and 10. There's $1:47 left on the clock, something like that. The Rams have 1 timeout. And so you kick a field goal, you run the clock down, you use their timeout, you kick a field goal, you have a 6-point lead with 6 seconds left. And I mean, sure, something could have happened on the kickoff, but, in my mind, just with the timing that the no call occurred, the reason that that Drew Brees isn't playing for his 2nd Super Bowl is on that official.
Oh,
Which
man.
It sucks. I mean, you should never. That's what's unfortunate about officiating, and we accept that it's part of the game. That's why the K zone is not the official balls and strikes indicator in baseball. There will always be a human element. I hope there's always a human element,
and that's what makes sports great.
Exactly. You don't know what's going to happen, but as an official, and there were 2 of them there. It's not like it's just on one. There were 2 of them right there. You never want to be the official that throws an errant flag and determines the outcome of the game. At the same time, you never want to be the official that misses a mugging that should have been called and, essentially cost the Saints their Super Bowl. So, it is what it is. The Rams played a heck of a game. I mean, what is their kick? Greg Zuerlein, 57 yards in overtime.
Yeah,
that would have been
was
good from 70.
Yeah.
Sean McVay after the game was like, that would have been good from 70, and I believe him.
Plus the 48-yarder to go into overtime.
Yeah. With the Superdome rattling, they were saying that in the press boxes, any beverage that was on a desk or table was in danger of tipping over. It was that loud. So credit to the Saints, the Rams. Sean McVay was in high school the first time that Tom Brady played for a Super Bowl. So
yeah, Sean McVay and Julian Edelman played against each other in college.
Yeah. McVay was the quarterback for...
McVay was a receiver, and Edelman was
receiver,
a quarterback.
Yeah, and Edelman was a quarterback for
had
Kent State.
200-something yards passing, 92 yards on the ground.
But they lost that game.
McVay had a nice catch on a little 4 verticals route across the middle.
Yeah, 3 catches for 37 yards.
Who knew he was such a cerebral maniac back then?
So, the Rams obviously get in. Their last Super Bowl that they played in was against the Patriots. So that's a story.
New England has never won a rematch in a Super Bowl. They lost their rematch against the Eagles. They lost both against the Giants. And we'll see with the Rams.
Oh, we'll have to see. Yeah, and on the other side, the Patriots take down the Chiefs. I told you. Everything in me wanted to take Kansas City. Everything in me wanted to say Patrick Mahomes is going to do this. But they didn't. And the Patriots win.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick is the evil emperor.
There was a lot of material for conspirators that say the league is for the Patriots.
Oh, absolutely. The ref saying, I've got your back to Tom Brady? What? I mean, my goodness.
You just got to feel for him. I mean, the game was over. Pat Mahomes did everything he needed to do.
Yep.
Tom Brady threw an interception. Game over.
D Ford's offsides.
Gosh, I mean...
How
he was
do you let that
he
happen?
was substantially offsides too. I mean, dude,
yeah,
come on. The game was over. The Kansas City was finally going to take that next step.
Yeah, D Ford is being crucified in Kansas City, I'm sure. I mean, he's been coming into that game. He's He's been one of their best defenders all season on a Kansas City defense that has not been anything special.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what I was concerned about. Was yes, it's cold, but Tom Brady plays in New England, so it's not like he's not used to that.
Yeah.
And I was really afraid that he was going to come in and do exactly what he did on every single third down and overtime. Just dice that Kansas City defense up. I mean, Tony Romo called every single play in that overtime period. It's not like they were drawing up some elaborate play call like Sean McVay would do. They were just looking at their matchups. Okay, we have Gronk matched up on a corner. Well, that's a mismatch. Where's the safety? Oh, he's 2 steps too far back. All right, we're going to run an inside slant to Gronk. Bam, first down.
And then Tom Brady, he looked gorgeous in the pocket. Stepping back.
Yeah.
He looked massive too.
Well, he could because anytime he got touched, they threw a personal foul.
Stands there and threw absolute heat-seeking missiles. Yes. I mean, and that was the most evidence he could put up that he's not losing anything. I mean, you've got gritty receivers like an Edelman, you've got a Gronk, you've got a Kevin Hogan. But man, it was
Kevin Hogan is a vital piece to
so
that New England offense.
Kevin Hogan in a visor looked clean.
Hey, there you
little
go.
Clear visor action.
Yeah, so I mean, it is what it is. The
you feel bad,
Patriots,
but we should raise a glass to an incredible day of football. First time ever, both conference championship games go to overtime. I mean, it was amazing. So I was happy about that.
Yeah, no, it was entertaining football. The one thing that I will say is those overtime rules are abysmal.
Yeah, horrible.
The fact that a Super Bowl is determined by the flip of a coin is moronic.
Pat Mahomes should be able to have an opportunity.
Yes. I mean, no. Do I think that they should go to the college rules? No. But what's the harm of playing a 10-minute overtime quarter? Just another quarter. Why on earth would you let a coin flip ever determine the outcome of a game, especially when it's to go to the Super Bowl? I mean, regular season, I don't like it, but okay, I get it. The NFL set it up to where you can play a Sunday night, and hey, you have a Thursday night game that week too, which is stupid. But so in that instance, if you want to say you're saving wear and tear on their bodies, fine. But in the playoffs, in an AFC Championship game, come on. I mean, it's really, really disappointing because you knew as soon as Tom got the ball, I mean, Tom could have done the Matt Hasselbeck thing and said, we're going to get the ball and we're going to go score, and he would have made good on it.
Yeah.
I had no faith in that Chiefs defense, even on all those third downs.
Yeah.
To hold Tom Brady, because that's just what Tom Brady does, and that opens up a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. Tony Romo getting the D coordinator fired.
The Patriots legitimately Tom Brady has been to more Super Bowls than every other NFL franchise.
That is insane.
Cowboys, Packers, Steelers, Colts, you name it, he's been to more of them. The only entity that has been to more Super Bowls than Tom Brady is the Patriots themselves. I mean, 9 Super Bowls for Tom Brady.
And he still gets so amped to go to him. Like when they had the walk-off touchdown against Kansas City, you could audibly hear him. Yeah. And he jumps on his lineman. I mean,
uneffing believable, I believe was his line. Yeah. So,
somehow that got cropped out on microphone, but I turned my head and I was...
Yeah, no, it was pretty obvious watching, and I was like, ooh, that's CBS is getting a fine for that. So there it is. You have, what was it? As one caster said, Super Bowl, what was it, like L-VI?
He actually said that verbiage?
I believe it was a CBS caster.
Gosh.
Said, and
maybe Phil Simms. Maybe that's why I lost his job to Romo.
So wait, it's Romo that's replacing Phil Simms?
Romo took Phil Simms as the lead guy.
I'm sorry,
next to Nance.
I don't know why I thought all of a sudden I got them confused. Yes, Jim Nance, Tony Romo. Regardless of who you're rooting for, it could be 45-0. You are going to have just art over the airwaves.
Romo and Nance in the booth.
Can Romo Romo plays golf? Can we have him call the Masters with Jim too?
Oh gosh, that would be amazing.
It would be incredible. It would be incredible. Tony doesn't know probably anything about the ins and outs of baseball. He does about basketball. So
Tony Romo is he averaged 27 a game, I think, in high school in basketball.
Wow.
Dude's a machine. He almost was able to play in a Mavericks game, but I don't think Cuban let it happen. But he warmed up with him.
He did. He was on the sideline.
He's gotten buckets on Mavs in pregame warm-up.
Yeah. So it would be interesting to see. But that'll do it for the sports portion of Double Coverage Sports Talk, episode 25. To end this episode, Luke's got the lesson for us this week. Luke, where are we going?
All right. So this lesson is from the perspective if you are Team Fire Billy Kennedy. I don't know where I stand on the aisle in this issue, but I'm talking about managing versus cutting off sin. So we're in the Bible, we are called to not manage our sin. It's not like, all right, I'm going to try to contain it a little bit. We're called to cut it off completely. So regarding the perspective of fire Billy Kennedy, which again, I'm not saying that's my opinion. I mean, if we're called for Billy Kennedy. If he were to be fired, it's either all right, manage this season right now, let it just do enough so we can keep the ship afloat, or do you just fire him and start over, have a culture change, have new changes, and completely walk away from the pain, the frustration, the downfalls of this season, and completely go a different route? Do you cut it off completely? So regarding sin, I mean, we're called to do that same thing. I mean, I think of Scripture, Ephesians 5:3 is very clear on this. It says, computer is malfunctioning. Yes. But among you there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality or of any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Now, the most important thing in this verse is when it said there must not even be a hint. Mm-hmm. Not a hint. I don't see anything about there, all right, manage it. Just make it a little smaller and live with it.
Right.
No way. Cut it off completely. Not even a hint of sexual immorality or anything improper. Mm-hmm. Makes me think of God's holiness. That's why we can't be with God without Jesus Christ, without the blood of Jesus Christ. That's why Adam and Eve were removed from the garden, because God's holiness does not allow him to be with unholiness. Imagine like God's holiness is a certain color paint, and this other paint is a different color. If they mix, God's paint is tainted. Mm-hmm. It's like he can't be around imperfection, or it makes him imperfect. So for us, we can't just be okay with living with sin and just containing it, or living around opportunities that can cause us to sin. Like for alcoholics, you don't just walk into a bar. You don't, all right, I'm going to contain my sin. I'm going to walk into a bar and be fine, have a good time. Mm-hmm. No way. You cut it off completely. You remove opportunities. You remove the sin completely. There shouldn't be even a hint of anything improper. It makes me think of like in the Bible, Paul quotes something that's not even a religious text. He quotes a playwright in 1 Corinthians 15:33. Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Now, this is from the Greek playwright Menander. So, like, Paul's writing to the Corinthians, and he's using an idea that is so common that it's not even some crazy religious text.
Right.
It's what a playwright said. It's something everyone knows. Bad company corrupts good morals. All right, so for us with our sin, are we just going to be okay with containing it and just putting ourselves in opportunities? No, that would be foolish. But yet we do it all the time, because we're not able to take a step back and think. Like if you think in your life, take a step back what your struggles are, what you desire to flee from, and ask yourself this question. I recently had a conversation with some of my friends about this. How far are we willing to go to flee from sin? Like, do we understand the gravity of sin? Because many times, for myself included, it's not very far. Like I keep using the alcoholic thing. Like, how far is an alcoholic willing to go to flee from that sin? Mm-hmm. Are they willing to never step foot into a bar again? Are they willing to not walk down the beer aisle in a grocery store? Mm-hmm. Like how much do you love God? How much do you hate sin for you to do everything possible to flee from it? So I think that's just a challenge for your lives. Like ask yourself this question this week. How far am I willing to go? Am I managing my sin, which fails every time, or am I actually cutting it off and fleeing from even a hint of anything improper?
Right. Yeah, that's a fantastic point. A couple verses, I think, in addition to supplement that, 1 John 1:19 says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. To your point with your paint analogy, God promises to completely wipe our slates clean and forgive us. Because like you said, his holiness cannot mix with anything else. And so as Christians, when we confess our sins, God wipes our slate clean. And then, a lot of people say, well, how do you live with your sin, or how do you deal with that? If God's already forgiven you, can you keep sinning? Or, what is that relationship like? And in Romans 6, 1 through 23, I guess, is where this passage is. It says, what shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace may abound? By no means. How can we who died to sin still live in it? Mm-hmm. Just further reiterating your point that God cannot mix with our sin. And so when he forgives us, we are completely forgiven. Our sin is no more. He sees us as he sees Jesus Christ, who of course is perfect. And there should be no hint of sin in our lives. As we're being perfected until the day that Christ completes that work, sin should be, less and less a part of us as Christians. And, yes, we struggle every single day with sin, but as Christians, it's our responsibility to put that behind us and always look forward towards Jesus Christ.
I agree. That's a great point to bring up. And this was a problem in the early church, and it still is today. Does God's grace give us a free pass to sin? No. God is not someone you can take advantage of or trick. I mean, forgiveness and the receiving of Jesus Christ results in transformation. Yes, we're imperfect. Yes, we will sin and keep sinning. We have been freed from the penalties of sin. But like Romans 6, by no means should we keep on sinning.
Right.
Because that is not a true, or we're not just going to say, all right, God, I believe you. I know who you are, but I'm going to keep sinning. I mean, that's a rejection of transformation. So true transformation results in accepting of forgiveness and the desire to flee and the action to flee. Yes, it's going to be imperfect, but it's where your heart is, because God sees your heart, and Scripture is clear about that. So there's no taking advantage of God.
Right. My final thought on this is, I'm forgetting the reference, but it's talking about money. No one can serve two masters. And, in context, it's talking about money, but we can apply that to every other form of sin, not just greed. You can't, be actively pursuing sin and pursuing God at the same time. You can't sit on a fence. And so, going back to your Billy Kennedy point, you've got to pick a side. You either roll with Billy Kennedy and hope that he improves, the different aspects of this basketball team that need improving, or you go in a new direction, just like you choose to serve God, or you choose to pursue your sin. There is no both. So an excellent lesson once again from Luke, and that'll do it for episode 25 of Double Coverage Sports Talk. Appreciate you guys being with us and spending part of your day with the show as well. We're on Spotify now. iTunes,
sure are.
Spotify, Twitter videos are going to be a thing, potentially a YouTube channel as well for full-length videos. So a lot coming to the show, and we're excited to keep growing it with you guys as well. If you aren't already subscribed on iTunes, Double Coverage Sports Talk, or iTunes.com/Double Coverage Sports Talk, and then just search our show title on Spotify. It's the first thing that comes up. So really, really excited to continue taking strides with that.
Make sure to like, share, and enjoy the sound waves that Sir Mitchell and I put in public, if you will. That was kind of that just kept going downhill. It was more, wow, okay, I'm just going to stop there.
All right, there it is. Michael Scott says, sometimes even I start a sentence, and I don't really know where it's going. I just hope to find it along the way.
That was a supreme case of that.
It happens to us on radio. It happened to me on TexAgs Radio the other day, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, thank you guys for spending part of your day with us. Until next time, y'all have a good one.